also a complaint from the Jordanians that the Allied forces have been deliberately bombing Jordanian civilians. Let's listen to the briefing.
Commander of Operation Desert Storm, General Norman Schwarzkopf. We'll have a question and answer session following the briefing. Ladies and gentlemen, General Schwarzkopf.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. At 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, Operation Desert Storm will complete its second week. Last week, at the end of the completion of its first week, Secretary Cheney and General Powell gave you their assessment of where we stood at that time. They have asked me to give you a similar assessment at the end of the second week. Let me start by covering the campaign objectives to date. First chart, please. I realize that some of these may be difficult to read, so I'll go over them very quickly. But in our first phase, what we wanted to do was disrupt leadership command and control, destroy centralized air defense command and control, attack combat aircraft in the air and on the ground to achieve air superiority, damage nuclear, biological, and chemical storage and production capability, and commence attack on the Republican Guards. Once we had that done, we planned to go into a second phase, which was to destroy the air defense radars and missiles in the Kuwaiti theater of operation to achieve undisputed control of the air. Some people call that air supremacy. And finally, to sever supply lines in the Kuwaiti theater of operation. And once that phase was completed, we planned then to isolate the Kuwaiti theater of operations, continue our attacks on the Republican Guards, and we had other objectives which I will not discuss further. In order to tell you to measure our success to date, I think I will measure it against the objectives that I've just discussed. Let's first of all start with the leadership objective. You know, early in the early days of the campaign, we did attack many leadership targets. 26 leadership targets were struck. 60% of all those were severely damaged or destroyed. We also attacked power plants and telecommunications facilities. 1/4 of Iraq's electrical generating facilities are completely inoperative, and another 50% suffered degraded operations. I think I should point out right here that we never had any intention of destroying 100% of all the Iraqi electrical power because of our interest in making sure that civilians did not suffer unduly. We felt that we had to leave some of the electrical power in effect, and we've done that. 75% of Iraq's command, control, and communication facilities have been struck during our air campaign, and 1/3 of those are completely destroyed or inoperative. As a result, Saddam Hussein and the Iraqis have been forced to switch to backup systems, and those systems are far less effective and more easily targeted. Let me talk briefly about air defense. First of all, the F-117 remains virtually invisible and is highly effective. But further, we've attacked air defense nerve systems, striking 29 targets and more than 800 sorties. As a result, the Iraqis have abandoned centralized control of their air defense within Iraq and Kuwait. Very important point. This accounts in part for the very, very low attrition rate of coalition aircraft. Pilot skill also accounts to that low attrition rate. As you know, we've flown more than 30,000 sorties, and we've lost only 19 aircraft. In the last 5 days, we've lost only 1 aircraft to hostile ground fire. Talking a little bit more about air-to-air combat. As you know, General Powell declared that we had air supremacy last week. We've destroyed 29 Iraqi fighter aircraft with not one single air-to-air loss on the part of the coalition. Also, I think it's important to remember that not a single Iraqi aircraft to date has penetrated the coalition airspace since this war began. The last 3 days alone, F-15s have shot down 9 MiG-23s and Mirage F-1s. The Iraqi early warning system has completely failed, and their aircraft have been caught totally by surprise when we attacked them. A subject that's been very much in the news this week is airfields, so I'd like to talk now a little bit about airfields. Next chart, please. Well, we originally targeted 44 airfields, 16 primary airfields, and another 28 dispersal airfields. We constantly are reevaluating this based upon where they put their airplanes. To date, based upon where their airplanes have been, we've attacked 38 airfields, and we've flown over 1,300 sorties against these airfields. The 38 airfields have all been struck at least once, and many of them have been struck at least 4 times. At least 9 of them are non-operational. But it's a very important point. We never had any intention to render all of the airfields inoperable. That was not our intention at all. Our intention is to render the Air Force ineffective. There have been varying reports about how many of these airfields have been destroyed, and there have been varying reports about how much damage we've done on the ground. I tell you, we can confirm at least 25 airplanes destroyed on the ground, and I want to give you an example. Please, next chart. This is a graphic reproduction of some hard evidence that we have of the Al-Taganim airfield on 23 January. We went in to the Al-Taganim and we destroyed 3 Badger aircraft on the ground. In addition to destroying 3 Badger aircraft, we did severe damage to an Adnan Candid airplane. This is the equivalent of our U.S. AWACS. When we looked at our results, we found out that there were 3 more Badgers on the ground, so we flew back the next day and we destroyed those 3. Now, as a result of this type of operation, they decided to put all of their aircraft in hardened structures. They tried to hide their aircraft. Therefore, we commenced a systematic destruction of those hardened shelters. At this time, I would like to introduce Brigadier General Glosson. He happens to be the commander of the 14th Air Division. He reminded me today, even though I look upon him as my and General Horner's principal Air Force target planner, and he's going to discuss a little bit of this hardened shelter attack. Would you start the video tape, please?
What you're about to see are the hardened aircraft shelters at 3 installations. The first installation being one of his primary MiG-21 bases of the Iraqi Air Force. That shelter was destroyed by a F-117, as are many of the other in this tape. Again, the F-117. Each and every hardened aircraft shelter obviously does not have an airplane in it, as you can see by the explosion and the degree of explosion. However, there are a significant number of them that do and have other things stored in them, that being a case in point. Again, the 117. Talil Airfield is one of Iraqi's major F-1 or Mirage 2000 bases. This hardened aircraft shelter was destroyed by an F-111.
Okay, would you stop the tape, please? The results to date of this type of attack, if we have destroyed more than 70 of these hardened shelters, and quite frankly, the Iraqi aircraft are running out of places to hide. We now have reports that many of their smaller aircraft, they have moved to roads and hidden them in residential areas that are close to the airfields because they know we're not attacking civilian targets. As you all well know, 89 of their aircraft, and I should say these are their frontline F-1s, Mirages, and their MiG-23 Fencers, 89 of them have flown into Iran. The simple fact of the matter is that now, every time an Iraqi airplane takes off the ground, it's running away. As a result, Chuck Horner, my CENTAF commander, has now claimed air supremacy. I'd like to talk a little bit about the isolation of the Kuwaiti theater of operations. One of the ways we do this is by destroying the bridges that lead into the Kuwaiti theater of operations area. Next chart, please. We've targeted a total of 36 bridges. Out of those 36 bridges, we have attacked 33 of them with over 790 sorties. Obviously, by shutting off the bridges, we shut off the supply lines that supply the forces in southern Iraq and in the Kuwaiti theater of operation. I'd like to now show you a little film of the destruction of the bridges numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order, and give you an idea of what we're talking about. Would you show the video, please? The first video is a railroad bridge. And obviously they have very limited rail lines, and when you take a railroad bridge out, it makes a big difference. We try and hit right near the shore, I've been told, because that's the most difficult to repair and does the most damage if you get in at that point. That's one end of the bridge. You'll now see the same bridge again. Notice that's where we hit before. The span's gone. We're now hitting the other end of that railroad bridge. Okay, next we're going to show you some versions of highway bridges. You might ask on this next shot why it is we're hitting the bridge in the middle. The answer is you can see how cloudy it is. The pilot just breaks out of the cloud and doesn't have a lot of time to get his sight on the bridge, so he just puts the sight where he can on the bridge and bombs away. Another type of highway bridge with a different type of abutment structure. Bridge, of course, running this way now. I'm now going to show you a picture of the luckiest man in Iraq on this particular day. Keep your eye on the crosshairs. Right there. Look at here. Right through the crosshairs. And now in his rearview mirror, okay, stop the tape, please. I'd like to point out a couple of things that are significant about the tapes you just shown. All those tapes were taken at night. The night is the time when before he moved the most and resupplies the most. You'll notice that on all 4 of those bridges, you only saw one vehicle. That's another indication of how we're interdicting his supplies. 2 days ago, we observed a supply convoy backed up for 15 miles on the road from Baghdad to Basra. It was backed up on the north side of the road right near the bridge that we had knocked out. Obviously, we attacked that convoy, and we observed countless secondary explosions when we attacked it. J-stars and other very sophisticated systems give us a level of measure of just how much damage we're doing to his logistics traffic. This is over here on this map, excuse me, Roger. This is the main supply route right here that comes down into Kuwait City. In the past, on any given day, in the early part of the campaign, you could look at that main supply route. At any given time, you'd find about 1,000 trucks on that MSR. Nowadays, whenever we look at it with any of our sophisticated systems, the maximum we find is less than 100. That means about a 90-day degradation, a 90% degradation in his supply rate. If you translate that over to what we know about his supply rate, it takes him about 20,000 tons per day to support the troops in Kuwait. We feel that we've reduced him to about 2,000 tons per day. We've got some anecdotal information that would also demonstrate that we're being very effective. We get many, many reports out of Kuwait that Iraqi soldiers are begging for food from Kuwaiti civilians, in many cases stealing it also. The enemy prisoners of war that we've taken have told us that they're receiving only one meal a day. That meal generally consists of a bowl of rice or a bowl of beans, and they have no water in which to bathe. And as a result, many of the enemy prisoners of war that we've taken are infested with body lice, and many of them have open sores on their body. I'd like next to come to nuclear, biological, and chemical. Next chart, please. We had 31 targeted locations, and we have attacked all 31 with over 535 sorties, as you can see. We know this is of great interest to the international community, and therefore we were happy to report that we have destroyed all of their nuclear reactor facilities. Baghdad Nuclear Research Center has been leveled to rubble. Precision-guided missiles and TLAM cruise missiles have struck hard at the nuclear, biological, and chemical facilities. As have the many aircraft we've shown. Over half of them, those facilities have been severely damaged or totally destroyed. We have absolute confirmation that we've destroyed over 11 chemical and biological storage areas, We've also destroyed or heavily damaged 3 chemical and biological production facilities, and we're going to continue a relentless attack on this very, very, very heinous weapons system. Let me turn now to the Republican Guards. We're targeting the Republican Guards with about 300 sorties a day, 300 sorties a day. We're using very accurate bombing, and even in bad weather, the many secondary explosions are confirming the fact that we're inflicting continuous damage on them. Now remember, I said 300 sorties a day, but let me give you some examples. On 26 January, 27 B-52s dropped 455 tons of explosive on the Republican Guards. Yesterday, 21 B-52s dropped 315 tons of bombs on them, and today, 28 B-52s dropped 470 tons on them. That's not to mention the other strikes that we're doing with F-16s, F-15Es, A-6s, etc. Just from 12 noon yesterday until 3 o'clock this morning, that's a little bit more than a half a day, we have confirmation of 178 trucks destroyed, 55 artillery pieces destroyed or damaged, 52 tanks destroyed or damaged, and heavy secondary explosions from revetments and fires all over the area. We had one spectacular explosion on the 28th of January. Let me give you a reference. If on a scale of 1 to 10, the eruption of a volcano registered 10, and the recent explosion at the Soviet rocket propellant plant would register a 9, the explosion, the secondary explosion we had the other day, registered a 12. We now have confirmation that we destroyed over 125 storage revetments in the largest ammo storage area in the northern part of the Kuwaiti Theater of Operations. We're talking about right up here in this area right here. And needless to say, we are going to go back and visit it again to get anything else that happens to be left there. We're also attacking very close in to our positions with over 300 sorties a day. Just to give you some results this week, on the 28th of January, the personnel carriers and all the tanks observed burning. 5 to 6 self-propelled artillery tubes were destroyed in the same area. And on 29 January, the Marines sighted 80 to 100 vehicles in revetted positions, and they destroyed at least 34 armored personnel carriers. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention naval operations. The Navy's done a great job supporting the air campaign, and the Navy has flown over 3,500 sorties from our 6 carriers, and they've also launched more than 260 Tomahawk missiles. Chart 7, please. We have 170 ships out there that have established sea controls on the waters of the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea. We have already sunk or disabled 46 Iraqi naval vehicles, and the Navy has captured 74 enemy prisoners of war in 2 engagements. I also think it's significant to note the very limited area of operations of the Iraqi naval forces. As a result of our naval operations, they really never venture much out beyond the straits here by Bubiyan Island up into Qasr. Occasionally they get out into Kuwaiti waters, but when they do, we certainly go after them. I would tell you even today, British Lynx helicopters, Saudi Dolphins, and U.S. Army helicopters attacked 6 patrol boats. The results was 4 sunk. This morning, we were also attacking some patrol craft, and at last report, we had damaged 3 or 4. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the readiness of our amphibious forces. We have very large amphibious forces over here, and they are continually training and ready to do the job when called upon to do so. And of course, the maritime interception operations are still continuing with more than 7,000 intercepts to date. When you talk about Navy, you think about water, and around here lately, when you think about water, you've thought about oil, so I'm going to talk a little bit about oil for a minute. Next. You remember the pictures I showed you the last time I was here. This was the original oil spill before we took any military action against the manifolds. I told you we weren't sure what we had done, but the next day, this was a result where we'd already diminished. I am very proud to tell you that yesterday, this is the result of that area. Blue water, no more oil slick out there, and the United States military is very proud of any role we may have played in doing away with this ecological act of terrorism. Let me now turn to ground operations. U.S. and coalition forces are defending Saudi Arabia, and we're also repositioning. Until last night, there were no major ground engagements, although the Marines in their assigned sector were routinely receiving sporadic rocket and artillery fire. And in their effort to reduce that, on at least 3 occasions last week, the United States Marine Corps conducted artillery raids on enemy frontline units. Night before last, they were particularly effective and reported severe damage on the enemy and great loss of life. I'd like now to sort of report what's been going on last night and today. If you look at this position here, yesterday evening, we had an attack in that area by what was estimated to be an Iraqi mechanized battalion. It crossed the border. It was engaged by a Marine light armored infantry battalion and tactical air. Result, 10 Iraqi tanks destroyed, 4 enemy prisoners of POW, and the Marines lost 2 light armored vehicles. At point number 2, right here, later on that same evening, another Iraqi battalion came across the border. These were again engaged by AC-130s and Cobras. We destroyed 4 tanks and 13 vehicles. We have had reports that the Iraqis went into, number 2 right here, that the Iraqis did go into Al-Khafji. Of course, as you know, Al-Khafji has been abandoned and deserted since the very first day of Desert Storm, so there was no one there. At position number 3, in the very early morning, Iraqi tanks and infantry again crossed the border. This time they were initially engaged by the Saudi Arabian National Guard, and then Marine TAC Air engaged them and the enemy withdrew. Early this morning, 40 more Iraqi tanks crossed the border again at the same place they came across before, right over here. They were once again engaged by the Marine light armored infantry. This time the results were 10 Iraqi tanks destroyed. They captured 9 enemy prisoners of war. At the present time, we have reports that the Saudis are moving forces into Al-Khafji to eject any Iraqi that may be in that area. Now this, please, is a very preliminary report because, as you can imagine, fighting all night long and then fighting again today, we don't have final results. But as a very preliminary report, the total losses to date, the pilots are reporting rather sensational losses of 41 tanks destroyed, 12 vehicles destroyed, 3 frogs destroyed, 7 armored personnel carrier destroyed, 130 millimeter destroyed, 4 artillery positions destroyed, 6 bunker positions destroyed. We have confirmed figures of 24 Iraqi tanks destroyed and 13 other vehicles destroyed. The Marines lost 2 light armored vehicles. Unfortunately, I'm very sad that I have to report to you that they lost 12 KIA in that engagement and 2 WIA. These are the first casualties of any ground conflict, or first KIA of any ground conflict. Now I want to turn finally to Scuds, another subject that has been prominent in everyone's mind. As I told you before, I think Scuds are militarily insignificant. I saw one the other day, and after seeing one the other day, I got to tell you, it's even more militarily insignificant than I thought it really was. I went out and inspected one of the Scud bodies. As far as accuracy is concerned, it certainly is militarily insignificant, but it is a terror weapon. And it's a terror weapon that's been targeted against civilian population centers, and that makes it important. So let's talk about Scuds for a minute. As you know, the total Scud launches have been 53, 27 against Saudi Arabia and 26 against Israel. I think it's significant, however, that in the first week they launched 35, and the second week they launched 18. I like to feel that we're doing some good. We've flown almost 1,500 sorties against the Scuds to date, and the Patriot success, of course, is known to everyone. It's 100% so far of 33 engaged. There have been 33 destroyed. This chart also shows the sectors from which the Scuds are fired when they go after the major population centers. It's a very, very large area, but despite the size of the area, we have managed to destroy all of their fixed sites, 30 fixed sites, and we're quite confident of that. We've destroyed all of their major missile production facilities, and the pilots have reported to us more than 50 kills to date. But of course, again, we don't confirm that until we have hard information. I told you earlier that we have now declared air supremacy. By declaring air supremacy, that gives us the ability to use some tactics, some new tactics, that we're not able to use before. I'm going to have General Glosson come back up here and show you some film that I think will speak for itself.
First, by way of setting the stage, the first video you'll see is a air-to-air engagement with the F-15C and the MiG-25 Foxbat. What actually transpires attempt to attack a flight of F-16s exiting out of Iraq. The F-15Cs shoots down the trailer in the Foxbat. He launched his missile. The Foxbat was doing 700 knots. The pilot ejected before the missile reached the airplane, but the airplane was destroyed. When I pick up the tape, you will see the flight lead pulling to shoot down the other lead, or the other MiG-25. Note the radio terminology, if you will, and how he expresses and has total control of the situation to the extent of telling his wingman, make sure you're not in afterburner. Make sure you're only in mil power, because he's looking at a Foxbat that has a plume of fire coming out the tail, and so he just wants to make sure that's who it is, because there are friendlies very close by, other airplanes. The kill box, as we call it, is a rectangle box, and if you'll look in that kill box when it appears down in the right-hand corner, you will see the MiG-25 blow up. Roll the tape, please.
I know this says 19 January. There's countless footage of these things after 19 January. I got to tell you, every time I see them, I get airsick. I don't know what's going on. But these, I think it's obvious to anybody what's going on.
The bingo fuel call you heard, obviously, was he's getting low on fuel.
Bingo fuel. Bingo fuel.
Is anybody in burners? Everybody out of burners. 3651.
That's the MiG-25 right there.
Threat, southeast box.
Heat-seeking missile he launched, and it missed. Now a radar missile. The heat-seeker missed. The second one was a radar.
Flash coming out westbound.
And next, I'll put you in the cockpit of an F-15E for an air-to-ground sortie. And through the help of a targeting pod and a nav pod on the F-15E, let you look into the night sky of Iraq as we are attacking mobile Scuds, and show you how, as General Schwarzkopf said, that we have changed our tactics a little bit from the standpoint of being able to do things that we could not do earlier because of the SAM threat. White indicates hot. And you'll see on the FLIR pod that the 3 erector launchers, or mobile Scuds, are turning into the storage area to join 4 others. And then when you notice black indicates cold, and you'll see these get darker as this film goes on. And now the pilot is maneuvering to drop laser-guided bombs on this target. There are a total of 11 vehicles in this area, and all of these are already loaded with Scud missiles. As you can see, these have already been fired. And now we will show you a slow motion so you can actually see the bombs impacting. Notice the bombs come through, impact. Watch this one roll. The next thing you'll see is a secondary explosion in this area. The AAA is firing from that area. The flight lead now clears his number 2 man in to drop an area denial munition to take care of the remainder of the 4 vehicles that were on this side of the road.
Thanks, Buster.
Yes, sir.
There's a little bit of argument going on in the community as to how much damage we did in this film. The minimum damage we did on the 11 vehicles has been confirmed. We have knocked out at least 3 mobile erector launchers, 4 Scud missiles on Scud servicing vehicles, and 3 more Scud servicing vehicles. The other possibility is that we knocked out as many as 7 mobile erector launchers in just that one strike. I would also like to report to you that using similar tactics last night in western Iraq, We also attacked and destroyed 3 Scud tells with F-15s, and I feel we preempted a missile attack on Israel last night. Now, I certainly can't say there will be no more Scud launches. You can never say that. But I have a high degree of confidence that we're getting better and better at our ability to find them, and I think this tape speaks for itself in our ability to find them and destroy them, and I assure you we're going to continue to pursue those launchers. One last announcement. Today, we went over 500,000 troops in the theater. Let me just finish up by giving you a very brief closing assessment. By every measure, our campaign plan is very much on schedule. Now, there's no way that I'm suggesting that the Iraqi army is close to capitulation and going to give up. I think their actions last night have proven that to all of us. But I'm quite confident that the direction we're heading in is going to lead to exactly the outcome that we all want to see. That completes the formal briefing, and General Gloss and I now would be very happy to answer any questions you might have. Richard.
General Schwarzkopf, the Iraqis claimed yesterday that a POW of unknown nationality was killed in one of the bombing raids on a place where he's being used as a human shield. What can you tell us about this human shield business, and how are you dealing with that when it comes to bombing targets in Iraq?
Tell you I'd really like to tell you how I'd like to deal with it, but I won't get into that. All I can say is that is a gross violation of the Geneva Convention. I think it's very important to state right now that the International Red Cross has inspected all of our POW camps, and I will let their report speak for itself. I would tell you anecdotally that yesterday we transferred quite a large number of Iraqi POWs over to the Saudis, and the Iraqis were being treated so well in our POW camps that many of them said they'd be perfectly delighted to stay right there with the treatment they're getting. It's a funny thing about American troops, but they take pretty good care of their enemy once they're captured. But as I said, the International Red Cross has inspected our POW camps. I challenge the Iraqis right now to do the same damn thing in their POW camps, and look at how they're treating our people and the other coalition POWs. Thanks for the question. Skip?
General, you described heavy B-52 bombardment of troop positions in Kuwait. You described intercepting supply lines, troops that are giving you anecdotal evidence about 1 meal a day and body lice. And these same troops, it seems, made it 12 miles into Saudi territory last night. Was there any degree to which coalition troops might have been taken by surprise?
No, I don't think we were taken by surprise. As I said, there was nobody. Khafji had been abandoned. Okay, we had outposts in this area. The outposts reported exactly what we expected them to report. They made it into Ras al-Khafji, 12 miles, 6 miles. It's irrelevant how far it is because it was considered militarily. The reason why it was abandoned by the Saudis very early on is because, of course, it's in direct artillery range of the artillery right out here in Kuwait, and they didn't want to have bombardments going down on any troops that they had in this position. So in essence, the Iraqis that went into this area went unopposed. The Iraqis that went into these other areas were opposed and, in fact, returned back. I would tell you I don't think that battle is over by a long shot. I expect a lot more fighting will probably occur tonight. And I would tell you that, you know, obviously we've been talking, and we're ready for whatever comes in there tonight. But I don't think we were surprised. Yes, sir.
Sir, with the Marines engaged here, can you tell me how many American troops are in the forward positions there? I had the...
No, I'm not. I would never tell you how many American troops are in the forward.
I don't mean how many, but is there quite a bit? Is there quite a bit of American troops in the front lines?
There's enough American troops where we need them to do the job. That's about all I'd like to say on that. Yes.
Could you share with us your views on the threat of Saddam Hussein to use chemical weapons against civilians, to escalate the war, to pull more surprises of that sort, to use biological weapons? Do you think those threats are credible or not? And what steps, if any, can you tell us that you're taking to meet them?
Well, as we've said all along, we don't discount anything on the part of Saddam Hussein. I think some of his other actions, some of the things he's done to date have demonstrated that he's willing to do anything. So I frankly, having seen the accuracy of the Scud missile, once again, I don't think that the Scud missile from a military standpoint, or even its ability to lay down a very, very dense, wide, long type gas attack, you know, because it takes many missiles with a certain degree of sophistication to do that. I don't think that that's going to happen. On the other hand, there is no telling whatsoever what he might try and do with a single warhead on top of a single missile, and therefore I would never discount that possibility.
General, why do you think these 89 planes have flown into Iran? Can you give us a reason why you think that's happened?
Well, you could really come up with three different scenarios, okay? Scenario number one is they are flying off to husband them for another day. That's one of them, okay? Husband their resource for another day. Scenario number two, you have that they are flying in there to launch an attack, against us at some future date, although the Iranians claim that that is not the case. And to date, I see no reason why we shouldn't believe the Iranians. Scenario number three, and we've had some reports that some of those people were defectors. So it could be any one of those three things or a combination of all of them. But I think it's a very good sign that they don't feel confident where they are. They got to run someplace else to hide, and I'm delighted with that outcome.
General?
Yes, Joe.
General Glosson, in the film of the attack on the Scud launchers, you said something about an area denial weapon, and we saw quite a large piece of landscape light up there. What kind of weapon is that?
That was a CBU-87, referred to as a cluster bomb munition, and it's for the purpose that it was used for there.
Think right back there.
General, could you tell us how many Iraqi troops and tanks have so far come across the border in these engagements down here?
No, I really can't. I told you about a battalion, I think, in each case, and there's about 40 tanks per battalion. And again, we're not in the business. Obviously, we're shooting, not counting when they come across. So
just one follow-up question.
Sure.
Given this entire presentation tonight about the effectiveness of the coalition air forces, is there a chance that there won't need to be a ground war?
There's always a chance of that. But certainly, you know, as a military planner, you always plan for the worst case rather than the best. And I'm certainly not going to assume away the capabilities of the enemy at all. And the mere fact that they launched this spoiling attack or whatever it might be indicates that, you know, they certainly have a lot of fight left in them. So I'm not discounting that. Right here, yes, sir.
What were the weapons used against the Hardened aircraft shelters? And a follow-up question on a different subject. Approximately what was the range of the MiG interception when the AIM-9 didn't work and he had to go to the radar-guided weapon?
He was, I'd rather not say the range when the AIM-9 did not fuse, for obvious reasons. The bomb that penetrated the Hardened aircraft shelter was an I-2000 weapon that we used for that purpose, that's hardened for that situation.
Down here.
The bridges, the same type of weapon as we use against the Hardened aircraft shelters.
General Schwarzkopf, there's been a late report from Reuters that the Iraqis have opened up another oil spigot at a place called Mina al-Bakr. Are you aware of this, and do you have any tentative plans to deal with it?
Mina al-Bakr has been leaking for several days now. That's an Iraqi oil terminal, in fact, and it's been attacked for several reasons. Is that if they stay where they are and fight, they're probably going to be maimed or get killed, and if they come over here, they're going to be treated very, very well, and they'll live and get to go home, and that's basically the message we're sending them. The second question was...
if you know what the CBS can.
No, we found their vehicle, okay, and then we got the very best trackers we had, and we had those trackers follow their tracks, and their tracks went into Kuwait, and of course that's as far as we could go. We're very concerned about it. I've alerted all my commanders. We're all constantly on the lookout for them, but that's about it. This campaign has many different phases to it. There's certain determinations that happen to each one, and I'm not going to telegraph any of our punches, but I will say, repeat once again what the President of the United States has said all along. That's our argument is not with the Iraqi people. Our intention is not to conquer Iraq in any way or reduce Iraq to a non-country. Never has been.
Sir, can I follow up the UN resolutions?